Livestock producers are preparing for significant changes associated with the Veterinary Feed Directive, or VFD. At the beginning of 2017, farmers and ranchers will need to receive authorization from their veterinarian to use medically important antibiotics in feed and water. Earlier this week, we talked with Nebraska Extension beef veterinarian Richard Randle about what's in store with the new rules. We started by asking for background on the VFD.
So obviously there's been a number of conversations over the years about concern of inappropriate use of antibiotics in food-producing animals and what harm, if any, that might present to the public. And as a result of those conversations, kind of the culmination started in 2012 when FDA issued a guidance for industry, Guidance 203, which basically indicated medically important drugs should not have a label claim for growth promoting purposes, and that judicious use of antibiotics should be limited to treatment, prevention, and control. And they followed up with that with the guidance in 2013, basically laying out a roadmap for how that would be done. And as a result of that, the big thing that led to the VFD is that they felt there needed to be oversight by veterinarians in the use of feed-grade antibiotic use in food-producing animals.
What emphasis does the VFD put on the relationship between the producer and the veterinarian?
Well, that's a critically important part of the VFD ruling. In order for a veterinarian to be able to write a veterinary feed directive for a client, they must have an established veterinary client-patient relationship, which means that the veterinarian has sufficient knowledge of the operation and the condition to be able to at least issue a preliminary medical diagnosis and judgment, and that the client would agree to follow those directions of the veterinarian, and that the veterinarian is available for follow-up on that condition.
You said one of the things that might be helpful, for example, for a cow-calf producer would be to think about a given year and why or when you might use certain things.
Yeah, the thing about instituting this is it's going to take a little bit of forward planning and thinking, and so I talk to cow-calf guys about, so throughout your year, so whether it's calving, weaning, seasonal disease issues, where you have in the past used a medicated feed or mineral, how this might affect that going forward, and if it is affected, how you're going to need to work with your veterinarian to fall in compliance with the Veterinary Feed Directive and make use of that product if possible.
How might things change for the supplier, the feed supplier?
Well, obviously, in the VFD ruling, the way that works, the veterinarian would write a VFD in triplicate, and he keeps the original. One copy then goes to the client, but then the other copy goes to the feed supplier or distributor who's going to make up this. So they can only issue the medicated feeds with a VFD product in it under the directive of a veterinary feed directive. So depending on the size and what those distributors, feed suppliers might do, might change how they mix medicated feed, or they might decide not to be in the medicated feed business anymore. If they mix a medicated feed, then they have to stop, clean out everything before they mix any other feed, so there's no cross-contamination. So some distributors have talked about possibly they may only mix medicated feed one day a week or whatever. So it's not going to be call your veterinarian this morning, hey, I need to have some feed to go, some product to go in the feed here, and he writes a directive, goes to the feed mill, and you pick it up that afternoon. So again, it's going to take some forward planning.
How does VFD address off-label usage of some of these medications?
So that's pretty safe and simple. There is zero tolerance for off-label or extra-label use of any VFD approved product. So in order to use it, the antibiotic must have a label claim for using it in the condition that's been diagnosed and treated. There's a duration time frame, so there's an effective start date on the VFD of when it's allowed, when you're allowed to start feeding it. There is an expiration date beyond which you can no longer feed it, and the label also indicates the level that can be fed. You have to follow those labels.
On the Market Journal website, you can find more information about the Veterinary Feed Directive, including our interview with Kansas State University veterinarian Mike Apley, who serves as a member on the Presidential Advisory Council on Combating Antibiotic-Resistant Bacteria.